Hello YouTube! We are on the programming channel. This is about HTML and CSS. My name is Andrei. This is our 75th lesson. I greet you, welcome. And we are talking about the final test drive of your table display. Let's go. With this change, our columns are now perfect. We have 10 pixels of spacing between all the pieces and the columns line up evenly, even if you expand or narrow the browser window. While display table won't always be the right tool for your layout needs, in this case it's the best solution to get two even columns of content in the Starbucks page. It's a perfect exercise. The Starbucks CEO has decided to add the drinks menu column to the Starbucks Coffee web page. He wants the new column to go on the left side and be 20% of the weight of the browser window. Your job is to add a new HTML to the existing page in the correct position and then finish up the CSS below to make sure it displays as a table cell, like the other two columns do. Check your solution at the end of the chapter. The HTML for the menu. Here is how the CEO wants the Starbucks page to look with the new column on the left containing the drinks menu. The new CSS, you need to finish it. Fill in the blank to get the drink div to display as the first column in the page. There are no dumb questions. So I know we're not covering HTML tables until later in the book, but is the CSS display table similar to using HTML tables? It is similar in the sense that you're creating structure in your HTML that you can map to the rows and columns of table, but unlike HTML tables, CSS display table is all about presenting the content in the structure using a table-like layout. HTML tables are for tabular data that should be structured as a table, so using CSS display table is a way of creating a certain kind of presentation layout. While HTML tables are all about structuring your data, you will learn all about HTML tables in chapter 30. What do I do if I need more than one row in my table display? If you need to display content in multiple rows, then you just add more HTML structure to support that. If you take a look at the Starbucks HTML, you'll see we have two columns or three after you add the beverages column in one row. To add another row, you would add another div similar to the table row div nested inside the table container div and containing the same number of columns as the first row. You can keep adding rows by adding more divs like this. Why did we add the vertical alignment to each cell in the CSS with vertical alignment tab? We added vertical alignment tab to each table cell to make sure that all the content aligns with the top of the cell. If each cell is aligned this way, then the content is in each of our Starbucks page columns should align at the top, which makes for a more professional looking presentation. If you don't add vertical alignment, you may find default alignment in your browser is set middle instead. In some cases that might be what you want. Of course, you can set the vertical alignment to top, middle or bottom. Thus is the matter how much content it put in the cell. Not really, you probably wanted to make sure that no one column has so much more content than other columns that your page looks balanced, but ultimately it's up to you and how you want your page to look. Can we control the weight of the columns? Yes, you have some control over the weight of the columns by the weight property in this exercise to add the beverages column that you just did. You will probably notice that we set the weight of the column to 20%. You can set the weight of each column like this, and it's a good idea to make sure the weight's up to 100%. By using percentages, your table will still expand and contract appropriately as you resize the browser window. Strategies for your CSS layout toolbox. As you've seen, there are a variety of methods you can use to lay out your pages using HTML and CSS, and we didn't have to change the HTML much to change the layout of the page, other than moving a piece of content around for handling the floating sidebar and adding a couple of divs. For the table display layout, you handle the presentation of your content entirely with your CSS. That's really the idea. Your HTML should be all about structuring your content, and the CSS is what handles the layout. Which method you choose for doing that layout is up to you and is going to depend on the kind of layout you choose and how flexible you want it to be. Let's review. The floating layout, we used float to lay out the long page and float the elixirs div to the right of the main content in the page. In this case, float was perfect because we wanted the main content to flow around the elixirs div, which it did just beautiful. We haven't used it this way yet, but floats also work great for floating images within a paragraph of text and having the text flow around the image. We then used float to float the sidebar div in the starburst page and used clear to make sure that the floating sidebar didn't overlap with the footer. The big downside is that we have to move the entire div we are floating above the main content of the page, which isn't always optimal if that ordering doesn't reflect the relative importance of the content in the page. Another potential downside importance tag is that it's impossible to create two equal columns of content with float. So if that's your goal, you'll need another solution. Float works great for the long page. It's okay for starburst, but we'd like to keep the sidebar content below the main content and have equal columns. The Jello layout. Next, we create a frozen layout by wrapping a fixed size div around all the content in the page, and then we made it Jello by allowing the margins to expand with the auto property value. This makes for a great looking layout, and lots of pages on the web use this design. For instance, you'll see a lot of blogs set up this way. This also solved the problem of your content ordering. The disadvantages here is that the content doesn't expand to fill in the entire browser window, which many people don't find to be disadvantages at all. Jello gives you a nicely contracted fixed sizes array of content with expandable margins. And strategies for your CSS layout toolbox continued. Absolute gives you a nice liquid main content area with a fixed sidebar. The absolute layout when then used absolute positioning to get back to a liquid layout, and this also allows us to keep our content in the order we want by setting the sidebar to specific width and positioning it to the right of the main content. We have a main content area that expands and contracts with the size of the page, and the sidebar that stays fixed on size and is unhovered to the right side of the browser window. This is a great choice for layouts when you want one part of your page to be fixed in size and one part to expand and contract, or when you need an element to be located at a precise location. We'll see how to do that shortly. The downside for the starburst page, however, is that the sidebar overlaps the footer again when the browser is wide. So we continued in our quest for two perfect columns and move on to. With table display we got the even columns we wanted. The table display layout. With the table display layout we hit the jackpot of layouts for starburst. We did have to add a couple of divs to our HTML structure to get it to work right, but that paid off way to perfectly aligned columns that expand and contract beautifully with the size of the browser window. In this case, the structure we added to the page was purely in support of the layout. It didn't add any meaning to the pages. You'll find that div is often used that way, and in fact when you get to the next chapter you'll see it is even more true today than it was just a few years ago. But don't go div crazy, you want to pick the best layout for your needs and add as few divs as necessary to get the layout you want. Table display layout isn't always the right choice for layout, but for Starbucks it works perfectly and even lets us easily expand to add a third column for the beverages menu. Nice. There are as many page design on the web as there are designers, but many of choice those designers based on the layouts you learned about. Here are some variation of this. You now have several strategies on your layout toolbox to choose from, so you're in a good shape to handle just about my layout job your boss might throw at you. And problems with the header. We'll talk about this in the next lesson, and this is our 75th lesson over. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel, please. Put likes, share with friends, comment. Eat bananas, chocolate and nuts, drink more water for the effective work of our brains. Bye.